recording so that we save these on our, so that folks who aren't able to attend on Wednesday afternoon can still get our updates on what's going on as the fourth, not the fourth, this would be the last Wednesday of the month. This is the one that we always talk about, an update on what's going on in the conference. And mostly that has been talking about finances, but I'll give some update on our finances. But the big thing that's going on right now is our staffing transitions, and we'll talk a little bit about how all of those pieces are going, and have plenty of room for some conversation with what's going on with you in the field, and so forth and so forthwith, or something like that. Anyway, I think it's time for my mid-afternoon nap. I need my afternoon coffee to have all my words come out smoothly, but we'll see. We'll just jump in. What's going on in the life of the conference? Well, we now are fully staffed, which is fantastic. Our three positions here in the support staff positions, you've had a chance to meet Lynn and Sarah and Naomi. Naomi's on vacation this week. So she's the one that takes lead in our conference on getting all of the Data Hub and yearbook reports. Data Hub and yearbook reports are synonymous. So as the yearbook reports for churches, she's the one that cleans up errors or helps people through the process. And so we have a little bit of cleanup that we're working on to make sure it goes well. I want to bring us back to our yearbook data entry sometime maybe when we're not in this open enrollment period where the Data Hub is open for editing, but maybe in the late summer or early fall to come back and look at our participation in yearbook reporting. Across the UCC, we are one of the lowest percentage reporting conferences in terms of churches that report. We're also one of the highest conferences to have churches that haven't reported for 5 years or more. This actually becomes kind of a problem. It actually compromises the nonprofit status of the local church because by being reported in the yearbook with fairly accurate data is how you are represented to the IRS as being part of the under the umbrella 501c3 of the UCC. And that's actually a really important piece to maintain. I know there's all kinds of reasons why people don't want to do it. Some of the ones that I hear, it feels like a big brother. The numbers that they ask for don't represent our real ministry. It doesn't paint a picture of who we really are, what we're really about. Yes, those things I understand, those are all true. I'm also on a committee nationally with the CARD leadership. CARD is the Center for Research, Development, and Data for the UCC, and looking at what data in this changing environment might be most helpful to report on, and to what would illustrate what is really going on with our churches. What's the vitality? What are the struggles, and how can we capture numbers, use numbers to reflect some of that? There's also a huge variation, especially around membership numbers. I recently learned that probably at least half of the conferences have a process of collecting per member dues to the conference instead of or in addition to, like for OCWM. So our church's wider mission is sort of a give what you want, give what you can. The per member dues are, your report says you have 400 members and you have to pay $14. What you owe the conference to support this ministry is $14 times 400 members. Amazingly, have much smaller membership numbers in their churches. There's reason to slim those down or to make those a little more updated and accurate. There's reasons, pros and cons to all of these things, but at this point, hang on just a second. At this point, we haven't even, this is the first time I've said aloud that this is a conversation I'm having with other conference ministers about how they collect, how they interact with, how they're funded through their local churches. And so I think it's a conversation that we should be looking at as the Illinois Conference, but no idea how that would pan out. But that's all to say that the membership numbers can often be inflated and can be very different than average worship attendance, which tells a different story. But then how do you count average worship attendance when you're on Zoom or when you're doing Facebook Live? How do you capture online participations? And those are all questions that we are investigating. Mark, were you about to ask something?
Well, I was about just to share a story. In my first church in Iowa, they subsequently, in about 2-3 years after that, went to asking for a proportion of budget rather than membership. But when I first entered ministry, they were doing it by numbers in the books. The first church I had was reporting to conference and national right around 100. When you looked at their formal membership roll, they were over 300. They had devised a inactive membership roll that included about 200 people. Yep. Now, at that time, my now wife was, she was on the last 2 search committees. She was in the choir. She taught Sunday school. She was a seated member of church council. She was a seated member of the Christian Education Committee. When you looked at the membership rolls, they had moved her to inactive when she went to college for 1.5 years and never returned her. So those... Yeah,
there are games that are played, and this isn't really the place to have a whole lot of discussion about the pros and cons of doing it here. It's just
an example.
Conversation that's happening. And every plan has its upsides and downsides, and we all try to get the best deal for, and we're trying to be the best stewards of the gifts that God has given us. So that's something that Naomi's been working on. Sarah has been working a lot on getting us Realm up and going, and Keith and Lynn have been working a lot on getting ACS financials up and going. The commitment is our March report. So January through March, we've had to double report in Arrays, which is our old financial system, and ACS financials, which is our new financial system, because we're building our chart of accounts, our new chart of accounts, which went from 850 items down to about 250 items. With a more intuitive logic structure to how those are organized. Those are being established in ACS financials. All of these pieces have been unfolding at not necessarily the ideal time. And so starting the first of the year through March, we've double reported in both Arrays and in ACS financials. But the commitment is that the March financial reports will all come out of ACS financials, and we're giving Keith an extra 2 weeks of data entry, data cleanup time. So the FAB meeting will be delayed months so that we have a better chance of seeing more complete reports. The April reports will come out 2 weeks later at the normally scheduled FAB meeting in May. We're just delaying the April FAB meeting by a couple of weeks so that we can have good data to be able to review. Once we make this transition, this is one of the last big transitions in our financial cleanup that will give us more complete reporting, more accurate and reliable reporting. Our OCWM tracking will happen in Realm. instead of in the separate system that we've been tracking. Right now, when you send your money in from your church, you send a check with a remittance form. It gets sent to the lockbox at the bank. They scan it, and then that packet of data gets sent to our bookkeeper for inputting into our system. We are looking at whether or not it might be time to take the scanning piece back in-house. So it can be fairly expensive. It's a fairly costly service. But what are the pros and cons, and what are the processes we could put in place so that we have really good financial controls and segregation of duties to ensure the protection of our staff, the protection of your money, the protection of the ministry that we're trying to unfold. So we're exploring some of those options. Keith was in the office last week, and we got to talk through just a whole bunch of financial operational sorts of things. We've been really clear with Keith that his contract, which is done at the end of 2022, will not be renewed, and we'll be seeking new bookkeeper accountant services, partially because, like any organization, we need to not be dependent on a single person to understand everything about our finances. And we've hired him to do this extra piece of work, which is to with the cleanup, and then now with the conversion to a new system. And he's doing a lot more work than a normal external accountant would be doing. And so we're working on how to tease apart what is the role of the conference minister in this, what's the role of the support staff for operations, which is sort of our internal front end processing, what's the role of the treasurer, what's the role of the FAB chair, and for the rest of the FAB, or finance administration and business committee, what's the role of the camp directors, and what is the role of the camp support staff? Because a lot of financial stuff comes in and comes around through the camps as well. So there are a lot of people looking at our reports and our input now, which is a huge improvement of our process of a couple years ago. And I'm optimistic of where we're going to end up, but we're still in the navigating new waters space. And I am optimistic where we're going to end up, and I'm really excited about this next phase of having all of our reports and all of our data in one system that's built around what information we need and built around how we operate as a conference. And so I'm really excited about that coming together. Other exciting news. Have I shared with you all that we received a gift in honor of longtime volunteer Dave Franson? Dave is a longtime volunteer at Pilgrim Park, and in honor of him, we received a gift of $250,000 with three purposes. The first purpose is to buy an updated and running truck, which our old truck was in such poor condition we couldn't use it for any trade-in value. So we're selling it to the scrapyard for maybe $100. I don't expect much to come from it. But for several years, we were uncomfortable driving or Mitch was uncomfortable driving our working truck on the highway because he wasn't sure it wouldn't fall apart. So I think this is a really good use of funds. He found a truck. He's just purchased it. He's working with the company that'll attach the plow. And I got to admit sort of an arbitrary little story here. When he kept talking to me about needing it to work with the plow, I was thinking about plowing the fields for like hay, not snow plow, which of course is what he meant was snow plow. But when that light bulb went off, I just had to laugh at myself. How long have you been living out of the snow country, Molly? You know what this is about. You grew up here. Anyway, that's happening. Also, there's $150,000 set aside for going solar out at Pilgrim Park. And not just installing solar, but upgrading our water heaters and stuff that have been on gas, propane. transferring them over to electric so that we can pay for our own electricity. So it's both an effort for both consistent with our commitment to creation care, as well as to our commitment and long-term saving money. The concern of the donors was that they really wanted to give money in a way that would help the continuity and the sustainability of our camps. The remaining bit of money after those two things are taken care of, which will be at least $50,000, is set up as will be set up into the Franzen Continuity Fund, the interest from which will support the continuity of both camps from outdoor ministries in general, and will be able to be used for just about any purpose, but will remain as a corpus. The donors also extended a challenge to the Illinois Conference to match those dollars. So to step up and raise another $50,000, because a $100,000 endowment goes a lot further, than a $50,000 endowment. Have just a little bit more money that will support the continuing success of our camps. So that's a big celebration I wanted to touch on. The other big thing is our staff continue to get settled in. Kathy was the first one to shift her role, and she is now fully settled in on working with all 5 committees on ministry. Next week, we have our first meeting with all 5 committees, the entirety of all 5 committees. We're going to do some learning and thinking together next Thursday. Kathy's also providing support, pastoral care support to Prairie and Western Association pastors and churches. Stephanie then came on board at the end of January and has picked up the responsibilities for all of the pastoral transitions. And you heard her talk all about that last week. We let her pick up an association or 2 at a time. And so it took about a month, and she's picked up all 5 associations and all of the pastoral transition work in the conference, including interim, helping churches find interims. So it's the process all the way from an announcement of a pastoral leaving, whether it's for retirement or resignation, taking a new call, any other sort of resignation or termination, all the way until the installation of the next settled pastor. So we all know that can be several steps along the way. There's often an interim, there's profile writing, sometimes more than one search committee, and she'll be working with the churches through that whole journey. She's also, the last piece of her role that she's picked up is she's providing pastoral care to Eastern and Fox Valley churches and pastors. And she will be live in person with the Eastern Association for their spring meeting on April the 30th. So I think that's the only spring meeting that is happening in person is the Eastern Association. But I know they're excited to meet in Champaign at the end of April, COVID permitting. And then Terrell is having fun starting to dream about what program innovation and events portfolio might look like in the Illinois Conference. And we'll have to hear from him again in another month or 2 as some of that starts to unfold and figures out what that's going to be looking like. So life is good in the Illinois Conference. There is so much positive going on. I'm going to ask Tracy, if she's still here, a quick question. If she puts her video on, I'll know she's there. There she is. Tracy, did we use all of the precations?
We did. That's very exciting. We used all 33 of them. And so thanks to the grant from the Brown Endowment, 33 pastors, 28 were from Illinois. I think 3 were Michigan and 2 were from the Indiana-Kentucky conference. So yeah, that was wonderful. Carol, I think you were the last one to finish it off. So we ended on a bang,
That's really fantastic. I'm so glad that has been a service to everyone. I highlight that our camps offered this last year, and it's a time for pastors and/or pastors and their families to come to our camps during our quiet season and to stay on in our facilities for a very minimal cost. It's what, $60 for 2 nights and 3 days.
Right.
The difference from last year to this year is the grant covered the rest of our list price of what that would cost, what our list prices are for that space. And so our camps were able to actually take that as regular income producing use during underutilized times of the year. So really kudos to our camps for finding really creative ways to recognize and to utilize to the best of our possibility, our potential, these assets of the conference.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just for all of you to let your pastors from your congregations know, we had some pastors that, came over the holiday, Christmas kind of break and had a Christmas vacation with extended family here using the Pray-cations. Or we had one church that they brought their pastor and associate pastors, and they each had a cottage where they were able to relax, but they did some things together for like planning for the year. There were lots of different ways that pastors were able to use this. So please let your congregations know, and congregations encourage your pastors. We're hoping to be able to offer this again next year. So be looking towards that.
Thanks, Tracy. So now I'm curious what you all are curious about. What would you like to know about what's going on in the life of the conference from a conference staff perspective or a conference council perspective? And then if you don't have questions, I'm going to turn that question around and ask you to tell us about what's going on in the life of the conference in your setting. Because remember, the conference is all of the members of all of the churches and all of the clergy and all the covenant partners affiliated with the United Church of Christ and located in the northern 2/3 of Illinois. And I know there are stories going on and what's going on out in the field. But let's start first with questions about conference staff or conference council types of questions.
I'll ask.
Please,
I
Bob.
haven't heard anything about a conference annual meeting. Is that in the works?
It is. It is scheduled for the week of October 20th. Again, it's going to be virtual. It's not going to be live in person anywhere. We just have to give a whole year's notice to be able to find a location. Last October, there was no way to be able to predict whether or not we'd be able to meet in person. So we're planning another virtual event. We don't have the schedule yet. So last year, we got a lot of positive feedback of having several separate activities throughout the week and not just have everything pulled together in a short intensive meeting. So the meeting would be that Friday, Saturday with, I don't know which day of the week the 20th is. So it's the Friday and Saturday of the week that the 20th of October is. And that's when it will be and how it will be. So
I'm just curious. I understand that, securing a site, and having the lead time to do that is crucial. What if, just throwing it out there, what if there were local gatherings at the same time? So what if, say, a cluster of churches who long to be together could organize something where we would be together during the annual meeting, could still participate virtually, but there would still be some connection and opportunity for being together with like minds and hearts.
Yeah, I love that idea. And that's something I would turn to the conference, there's the associations to do some work on coordinating. One of the things I learned talking with other conference ministers with some of this virtual work is that there are parts of our country and our state that do not have very good internet access. And so there are conferences where whole areas came to, well, for General Synod, the conference rented a hotel and had the whole within their conference, and had the whole delegation together in the hotel so that everyone would have decent internet service. It would be a great idea to provide to address the accessibility issues we have with association-based gatherings or something like that. It's really difficult to do interactive hybrid on Zoom. And so need to look at some creative ways, or what are the parts, or can some of it's broadcast, some of it's interactive. The interactive stuff would need to be everybody live on their individual computer, because it's really hard to talk to a whole room of people. But in the part that's aired, like a worship service that's produced ahead of time and or live streamed, even if it's not produced ahead of time, it's happening live, certainly it'd be wonderful opportunity to gather. I love that idea. So Terrell's on the call. I hope he's taking notes, because he's going to be working with the planning team. I will also say, and Dave Knicker, I see your hand up. I will also say that committee, when they first went to meet, they sent a list out to everybody that they thought was on the committee, and they almost all said, we're not on that committee. So if you feel any inclination to work with the annual celebration planning committee, reach out to your association council, because they're the ones that nominate folks, and they're the ones looking for folks right now. So if you have any interest or skills that you think would be of value, please, I'm sure you have skills that are of value, and please consider that might be a ministry that you might feel called to this year. Dave Knicker?
Yes, a question. Listening to the input of staff, obviously aware that Catholic Laws is dealing with all the church and ministry committees. That, and I forget the name, I don't see him on the screen right now, is dealing with the issue of transitions. And with the presentation from Murph, it appeared that he was going to be the one relating to interim ministers. It feels like the situation with interim ministers have been not bifurcated, but trifurcated. And how do we pull that all together?
Yeah, Stephanie, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, I think I want to bring some clarity to that my role, which encompasses all pastoral transitions, also encompasses interim ministry. So I'm working with any church right now that's seeking an interim minister within the Illinois Conference. Just to clarify that for you.
Stephanie, one thing you might not know is Dave is one of the key leaders in the Association of Interim Ministries, the AIM organization.
I became aware of that last week while I was on vacation, and I was copied on some email that I think involved Terry, and now I'm not remembering their last name. So I've been in touch with Terry today, and I'm awaiting an email there to be in better touch with your organization. But feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll put my email address in the chat box here.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
And there might be a piece that y'all are working with the committees on ministry, but hopefully not on a real regular basis.
Right.
Updating standards.
Right. I mean, I would intersect there. Right. Like if someone takes a settled call in the conference and needs to transfer their standing in from another state or association, then I would have a handoff with Reverend Laws and with the COM in that person's, new association so that they could transfer their standing. So there's a little bit of that interplay. But that's what we're trying to call making seamless transitions.
There would also be within that clergy who maintain their standing in the association where they are, such as I did in Western. But when I went to
Right.
other associations, arranged for not transfer standing, but by dual standing.
Exactly.
And is that
Exactly.
going to be able to continue as a possibility?
Yeah,
I'll have to
I
let
think
Kathy or Molly speak to that.
what the manual on ministry recommends now is that for interim ministers, your standing remains in your home place, and that standing is recognized in the new association. It does not have to have dual standing, according to the new manual on ministry. But each committee on ministry, it's important to be in conversation with the committees on ministry as you move locations, just so that they're aware of who's serving in their area. And that's a piece that Stephanie and Kathy will really help. You know, we meet every Monday for several hours, and we're still working on how are those places how do we tease apart some of those places where there's a little bit of overlap?
It's important, I think, to connect with interim ministers, because I served in an association that did not and would not recognize my Western standing.
Mm.
Also, a person from Western was in an interim in another conference, and there were issues of conduct, and the association in Wisconsin where the church was he was serving would not deal with it.
Yeah, those get referred back to the association where the standing is held. So there's some standard practices that have been codified over the last couple of years nationally that we need to adjust and live into. And it'll take a minute for our committees on ministry to adjust and live into those things too. So really good thoughts. I appreciate that, Dave. And call us on it when we fumble the ball a little bit, because anytime you have a changing system, there's likely to be something that flubs up a little bit. So invite your grace and call us on it. Let us know when something falls through, because if we don't know what falls through the cracks, we don't know. So this is how we work on continuous process improvement. Thank you. Other questions for? Well, then I have some questions for you. Who can tell me something going on in your church you're really excited about right now? Bob Wang, I'm going to call on you if no one else pops in.
Well, I don't want to dominate the conversation here. Yeah, there's some exciting things happening up in the northern portion of Prairie Association. The Old Stone Church, Rockton, and First Congregational UCC Church in Pecatonica are in conversation. And the conversation has been very exciting, inspiring, energizing as we explore what a shared ministry together could look like. We're making good progress. Stephanie will be joining us at a meeting coming up in a couple of weeks as we continue to work out the logistics, and we're going to probably move forward with a one-year trial period, basically where I would then share my time between the two churches. About a 65-35 split is what we're looking at. But what's also exciting is the concept of a wider parish that we're looking at organizing and forming. So it wouldn't be just a shared ministry between two churches, but we would create this other entity, for lack of a better word, that would be a wider parish, playing around with some fun brands for this particular concept. And with the Pecatonica River literally joining the two communities, we like the symbolism there of the flowing water between the two. And the Pecatonica, one of the original indigenous names for the Pecatonica River literally means crooked river. So one of the names that we're thinking about assigning to this wider parish is Crooked River Ministries. So we're, kind of excited about, just the opportunities and the possibilities and the things that could come out of that as we look at other ways that we can involve other entities into this concept of a wider parish, so that it literally is not just two churches, but a joint ministry that is bigger than the two churches combined. So, yes, there's a lot of newfound energy, which is always good. The Pecatonica Church has been literally without a pastor since Judy Harris completed her 2-year interim there. And so they're pretty anxious to move forward with this as they continue to have pulpit supply from week to week. So yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Thanks, Bob, for sharing. I was privileged to be able to go preach up in Pecatonica and really enjoyed being with those folks. It was the week before they were voting, and they sat me down in the fellowship hall and said, okay, everybody, Molly can answer any questions you have. No one had any questions. So I said, you don't have questions. I'll ask questions. What do you think about this? Oh, we think it's a great idea. So there was so much positive and sort of a birth of what felt like a new sense of creative, imaginative energy that they hadn't lived in a while. So that was lovely to witness.
And Bob, maybe I'll just piggyback. I'm sorry, not piggyback. I'm actually going to preach in Pecatonica on Palm Sunday, and that'll be a nice opportunity for me to just make some connection and start to, again, just keep the energy flowing around this. I did reach out to our national setting today, and Elizabeth Dilley, who's our Chief Ministerial Excellence Officer, is out of the office today, but I'm looking for those examples of templates that we can use in this process. And I really think, this could become a really exciting model for the Illinois Conference, but also to share back into the national setting, where churches sharing pastors that's not unknown. Like I'm from the Nebraska Conference, that happens a lot, but the creativity around the wider parish is a really exciting potential model of innovation for us. So I look forward to the continued conversation.
And for other people that are listening, they may not realize that I am the designated term interim and began there a year ago in Rockton at the Old Stone Church. And so the timing of this, after completing 1 year at the Old Stone Church and now looking at this shared ministry for the remainder of my, just under 2 years, is really, to me, it's perfect timing, because I will then act as the transitional pastor to get them, living into this new model, and then really have what I think prepare them for advertising for a candidate for the settled call. It really could be something that would be very attractive to any candidates if we do this right, which, I think we're headed in the right direction.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else have anything? Who else? I'm not going to phrase it that way. Who else has something to share about what's going on in their faith community? Kyle. She's searching.
Sorry to figure out how to unmute. Yeah, so I'm the interim pastor just starting in January at St. Matthew United Church of Christ in Wheaton, and Alan retired at that time after 10 years of ministry. It's been a great transition, and we met with Stephanie on Monday with our new search committee, and that's going well. They're going gangbusters already. I don't know if that's, says something about me, but no, we're doing really well. And so I just wanted to share that, things are looking healthy here in Wheaton, and I'm super excited and great to have that resource in Stephanie as an interim. And so great to know that we're all working toward the same goal.
There's a lot of pastoral transition going on with churches at various stages of this, and there's anxiety always around it. So I know a lot of Stephanie's work is to like, okay, let's lower the anxiety. It's going to be okay. I had a really interesting conversation in a church that I was preaching at recently. I got to meet with the leadership team afterwards. And they said, oh, our pastor, we know he's already told us he's going to retire in 3 years. And how are we understand there's this great resignation and we're not going to have interims or pastors to call. I said, well, who are you sending to seminary?
Right.
And it was mind blowing to them. They never really considered that they might have a responsibility for developing the next generation of leaders. And they said, well, we don't have any young people that are interested in ministry. I said, seminaries have all kinds of people of all kinds of ages. I went to seminary with people in their 70s that may feel called through this season to be in ministry. We are experiencing a great resignation. We do have a higher number of resignations than usual, countrywide, nationally in the church. But that just felt like a God moment for those words to come out of my mouth. Like I hadn't really thought of them ahead of time, but in that moment of conversation to say, what are you, who are you sending to?
Well, yeah, God is still speaking. So, who are we sending off to?
So that's my challenge to all of you, like who are you encouraging to imagine a career in ministry, an opportunity in what's unfolding, whether they'll remain in lay ministry or interested in, and Tracy says, and why don't you have young people? And that's another question. And we have plenty of churches that do have young people. But it's not always young people that are going to be ready to go to seminary right away. And so there's historically underrepresented groups, which include women, which include persons of color, which include older graduate students, all different phases. So encourage you all to be thinking about that. Who are you encouraging to imagine a life in ministry? Who are you preparing to take the reins over from you?
I'm sorry, I have to say one more thing.
Oh, sure.
Kyle, I was the choir director at St. Matthew Church in Wheaton when I was in seminary back in the late 80s when John Rogers was the pastor there.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Kathy Laws for the first time. We had a pickup softball game and Kathy showed up in full uniform. Remember that, Kathy?
Well, we have a lot in common. That's right. Yeah, there's still like just super strong laity there, lots of great leadership, and so it's been a really wonderful at least first 3 months.
Yeah, and a great connection with the Agape Bell Choir.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, you also share the property with the Tamil Church.
Yes, we do. And the son-in-law of the Tamil Church, pastor, is our youth pastor. So so we have a Tamil youth pastor, and that's been great. And so
what are the joys and challenges of sharing your property?
Well, in the 3 months that I've been there, no, I've been in touch with the pastor. You know what, we really haven't, I would say, I think they've been there for maybe 4 years. We have not leveraged group things, and that's like on my list. It's kind of like a little bit down on my list of things. You talked a little bit about clearing the roles, and it says we have 450 people in our membership, and I'm pretty sure that's like pretty inflated. And so we're working on that and some other things. But yeah, no, we really haven't leveraged a real relationship. And so the two are fairly separate, except for this youth pastor who's kind of goes between. So I'm still kind of feeling my way out. But yeah, no, it's been great. And And I just think that there's a lot more that we could be doing to kind of make that relationship one of kind of mutual learning and following God in a new way. So.
Well, thank you. You know, I know other churches are faced with opportunities sometimes of sharing churches. I've been thinking about how we utilize this Wednesday afternoon chat. There's been purpose along the way. When I first came on board, it was just to be introducing all kinds of concepts and, you know, introducing me and talking about what's going on with the cleanup and all of these other things that we were addressing early on. And then this spring, we've been meeting, or this winter, we've been meeting all of the staff. I had this brainstorm the other day that what if we use some of this time to hear from churches? Now, I'll tell you, we're scheduled through April, at least April into May already. But how would you think about using some of this time to have folks from their churches talk about what's going on in their churches? And I was thinking about it in a format, something like 3 successes and a struggle. And because one of the things I love about conference ministry is I get to take these stories, like I know that what's going on in Pecatonica. And so I can say, Bob Wang, talk about this. But I can talk about that story when I'm visiting in Wheaton or visiting in Avon or, you know, wherever I am. But we're not hearing those stories across the board, and having some time on Wednesday afternoon, maybe capture an idea that another church is doing that could be exciting in our own setting or something we'd want to plug into. And then the struggle, I know, I will also say every single one of our churches has some kind of struggle. And to talk about saying, this is something that's harder going on. This is an amazing resource of practitioners dealing with the same sorts of things. Would this be a helpful place? Could we make this a sacred place to be able to gather, to present, this is hard, and gather wisdom from our colleagues? What do you guys think about using these Wednesday afternoon chats in this sort of, in that sort of way? I see some heads up, some positive thoughts. Good, okay. Catherine?
I was just thinking, I suspect doing it as a now and then piece rather than, and, you know, like put aside a segment to do it maybe necessarily, because some folks are more driven by, you know, different types of content. So some folks may not show up. If it's 3 weeks in a row of everybody sharing, they might be like, okay, I'm done. Just to be short, you know, rather than, you know, so maybe mix it up, because I think it's a great idea and probably a great format. And I suspect everybody, no matter what the size of their church and the size of their staff and how robust or somewhat challenging their ministries may be right now, could really use that. But yeah, I'm something inside of me is kind of saying, but don't do that like 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah, maybe we do we continue with the last Wednesday of the month is the conference update, and then another particular week of the month is 1 or 2. I think probably we need to schedule for 2 churches to be able to talk, because I think for many folks it will not draw out into a full hour conversation. But we could probably have 2 churches talk, and so that's 6 idea starters and 2 struggles for some good conversation. All right.
Well, it's almost like a larger community of practice then, right? So
Yeah. And without that sort of covenant, and lay people are on these calls too, often, and so get a different perspective as well.
Yeah, and I suspect that some of the folks who are really doing well, I mean, we keep hearing about churches that are saying, oh, my giving is up through all of this and whatever. We need to balance that a little bit, because there are, for every person who says, wow, things are going great and everybody came back and we've got extra people now and whatever, there's probably at least one or two churches that are saying, that's really nice to hear, but that's not my story. And I'm getting depressed just sitting here listening. So yeah, to work with that balance. And you've already proposed that, but that's what I'm thinking, as well as the not doing it every week thing. So
Mhm. That's really helpful. Thank you. Anyone else have any stories that they would share with us about what's going on in your home church? Catherine.
since no, okay, Harriet just stuck her hand up, so we'll go to her. I'll just say, since no one else is doing it, being one of the churches, perhaps at one end of that, I've spent the last week finding some of the growing edges of the residual of COVID and siloing, and some of the communication skills that have atrophied for some of my key people, even through all of those things. But in the meantime, we've just been really blessed that we were already tagged into Exodus World Services, who is one of the groups that works with refugee resettlement. And so one of the things that we've actually, for some of you have an idea how not large my church is. But we have done, just this weekend, we did our third settlement. So we've already done we did 2 apartments back in February for folks, and we did a family of 6 this weekend to get them resettled. So we've done 3 welcome packs already, for, just since the beginning of the year. And that's one of the things that my smaller church is really kind of excited about, because since they're rallying around that idea, there are a lot of things they cannot do. And that's really easy to focus on, especially coming back from COVID and seeing, where some of the gaps now are. But it's also been, one of those things that we know of bigger churches that said, wow, we did one of these, and they've managed to do 3 already. So it is good to be able to celebrate, and most small churches have some things that they really are being able to rally around. And yeah, so it is out there, and there are things that you can do, but you might not think, oh, we're too small to do that. And some of the churches of separate sizes could help share with that as well.
That's awesome. That can be so energizing to a small group that's starting feeling down, just to be like, oh, this is something we can do, and look at us, and really have passion and purpose. So that's great.
Thanks.
Thanks. Harriet, what was on your mind?
Well, what was on my mind was not necessarily what we're doing at my church, because I'm in different places, but I do chair the Justice and Witness of Chicago Metro Association, and our General Assembly is scrambling and doing all kinds of things right now. But the whole state of Illinois is impacted by some of the justice and witness issues. And so what I saw is the Wednesday chat as a way, some of you will get an email from me from time to time in a different association when I ask you to, there's a bill right now before climate change that needs like a minor editing so that we actually can do this creation of new jobs and things like that. So it wasn't what was going on necessarily in my church. I'm traveling around.
That's awesome, Harriet.
I thought Roger might take advantage of the buckets at this moment.
The buckets are happening too. I think Roger's got a spot on the agenda the next couple of weeks to talk about the buckets.
I do indeed. Thanks, Molly. First of all, the challenge is being met. Our current count is that of the 500 that we're looking for, we have some 220 pledged and underway. I'm in the process of asking folks to be collection points so that we can get them all to the Elgin warehouse in a timely fashion. And then I'm going to interrupt things for a few days and go hear what generally is happening in the world of response in all kinds of disasters in the National VOAD. And then I'll have some more to say about that when I get back, after I learn some more, because that's a never-ending process in that business. And I think that's pretty much where we are right now. The most fun has been to see folks take a look at the big pile of stuff that has to fit into a 5-gallon bucket. And you end up standing on it and jumping on the lid to get it shut. So it's a very good process. Hope more churches will jump into this before it's all over. We've got till the end of May, so go after it. And don't forget to apply for the grant from Cleveland, $250.
Thanks, Roger. That's a really great project. And it's one of those ways that we demonstrate that we're stronger together. Most churches can't do 500 buckets together by themselves, but together that we can do the 500. So, well, I want to thank you all for coming out and joining the conversation this afternoon. As always, I'm accessible to you. Molly Carlson at ilucc.org. Feel free to hit me with your questions or your curiosities, or hold me accountable. This is our work together, so I appreciate that. Next week, we have Advocate Justice. That's the name of the group, right, David Holston? Advocate Justice?
Administer justice.
Administer Justice, thank you. Are coming to talk with us about their ministry, and so they'll be here next week. David, do you have a word or two to say about them?
Yeah, this is if you're really interested in justice, this is a great organization. They provide a lawyer one Saturday a month at your church, free or almost free. I think it's a very small fee for people that need justice and can't afford it, people who can't afford to go to a lawyer. And they've been doing this for a number of years. They do it not just in the Chicago area, but all over the country. But a number of churches are beginning to make this as part of their ministry, because there are people, again, in our area who just can't afford legal help when it comes to issues where they've been mistreated or treated poorly. So that's the gist of it. I'm just a teaser for it. I would encourage you to be here next week. And if you know of other churches or individuals that are interested in this kind of thing, this is a program that does a really, really good job. And we are doing it in Moni, not at our church, but at another church where we hope to be able to help them. I've seen their program. I know one of their vice presidents is actually a member of the UCC. And so I think Kathy Laws, you know her.
I was just going to add that I hope our presenter is Judy Miller, who's a member of our church in Batavia. And she's an MID with the Fox Valley Association. And she's finishing up her work with the School for Ministry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I don't think she's our scheduled presenter. I think it's somebody else, but we'll have.
It will not be Judy, but Judy is a member. She's actually, I'm in her cohort with her, and she's the one who initially told me about it.
That's fantastic. Well, I hope you all come back next week to be part of that conversation. Every week, you never know what we try to tell you ahead of time, so you do know. But you never know what kind of exciting conversation we're going to have. Always glad to spend my Wednesday afternoon with you. Blessings on your day. Go in peace.